The Bridegroom Cometh. It's high time to wake up and go out to meet him. A warm welcome to this special video. Let's dive straight in because time is pressing. On January 8, 2026, the authors of the influential American Heritage Foundation published the following special report titled Saving America by Saving the Family, and the means they believe would achieve salvation that is supposed to last for 250 years. So let's take a close look at what they present as the universal remedy. Don't forget that nearly all the proposals from the Heritage Foundation have been adopted so far. It is extremely influential in America, and this time the family is to serve as the Trojan horse. And with that, the idea has already captured almost all hearts, because the family truly is an extremely important area of life. Let's read from the article. The task of the authors of this special report is to propose ways to remove the many obstacles blocking the formation of healthy families, to make marriages and family life easier, and to restore family to the center of American life in rhetoric and in reality. That sounds extremely good. But what will be the price that must be paid for this salvation? This extremely carefully reasoned and formulated 168-page special contribution addresses the current family situation in the USA and thus reaches the entire population. Let's read the rationale of the current assessment as summarized by ChatGPT. Introduction. Core idea of the report. The report argues that families, especially traditional marriage between one man and one woman, are the foundation of civilization and the American state. It places two central truths at the forefront. First, children have a right to the affection and protection of their biological parents. Second, the ideal environment for this is a stable household with married biological parents. Wonderful. Second, analysis of the family crisis. A. Demographic development. Marriage and birth rates have declined sharply. Many adults marry later or not at all. Cohabitation replaces traditional marriage in many cases. The fertility rate is below the level necessary for population stability. B. Causes. The report attributes the crisis to two major causes: social policy incentives that make marriage and work economically unattractive, and cultural changes since the 1960s that have devalued traditional family models. Yes, that's exactly right. Point for point. Third, social impacts. Children without stable family conditions have, on average, poorer educational outcomes, higher poverty rates, and more social problems. An aging society without sufficient birth rates endangers social security systems and economic stability. Correct. Fourth, fundamental guiding questions. The report poses the central question. What happens to a country whose citizens barely marry and have children anymore? It emphasizes that America's future will be decided by how it deals with family formation. Fifth, strategic response. Rebuilding the family. The authors propose that America should consciously choose the path of strengthening families again, rather than letting the trends continue unchecked. A social and political turnaround is necessary to make families attractive and supportive once more. So far, everything sounds perfect, and many people can identify with it. The report further proposes a broad package of fiscal, cultural, social, and legal measures aimed at strengthening marriage, promoting births, and stabilizing traditional family structures. Let's look at the individual measures with the goal of finding the danger in the Trojan horse. For the sake of time, we'll just read the headings. First, 3 major political strategic core imperatives. Stop policies from punishing family formation. Restoration of the American dream. Direct support for marriage and working families. All sounds wonderful. Second, financial incentives and tax savings measures. Newborn and marriage savings accounts. Expanded tax benefits for children and married couples. Bonus systems for larger families. Sounds great. Third, support for marriage and relationships. Marriage boot camps, that is, courses to strengthen marriage and conflict resolution. Public recognition of long-term marriages. Active countermeasures against online dating culture. Good proposals. Fourth, regulation of social factors. Restrictions for minors on social media and AI chatbots. Restriction of access to pornography. There's a lot of truth in that. Fifth, uniform day of rest. Excuse me? I think we should read this paragraph carefully. One of the most widely discussed proposals is the call for a legally established uniform day of rest, primarily Sunday, that restricts commercial activities on that day. For example, through the restoration or expansion of blue laws, regulating shop opening hours is intended to create shared time for family, recreation, faith, and community, as a synchronous day of rest to promote social cohesion, seeks to legitimize Sunday as the common day off based on constitutional precedent, McGowan versus Maryland. Critics, however, see conflicts here with religious freedom and state neutrality, since non-Christian groups, for example Jewish or Adventist Sabbath observers, would be disadvantaged if a state-fixed day of rest is Sunday. One of the most controversial demands is the establishment of a legal day of rest, in this case, Sunday, to secure regular shared family and faith time. A proposal that goes far beyond classic family policy initiatives. Anyone who knows us as High Sabbath Adventists and knows that we continue the church reform of the Advent pioneers at the beginning of Adventism in the 1840s, especially the upholding of the unchanged moral law of the Ten Commandments, should know that there is a core theme in Adventism, the third angel's message in Revelation 14, which warns against accepting the mark of the beast. Ellen White worked her fingers to the bone writing about this, and we have always done the same. That is the poison in the Trojan horse. Point 6 would be further political measures. But I think we have found the real core of the evil in the Heritage Foundation's proposal. We have often spoken of the blue laws in the USA in the 1880s, and how the Adventist pastors Waggoner and Jones were able to avert the threatening Sunday law of that time. Here is just an excerpt from one of our videos. Please watch this video, The Last Act in the Drama, again, so that you understand the context for today's special report. And yes, since the recent papal election, of the American Robert Francis Prevost, alias Pope Leo XIV, we have warned loudly about the two main actors of the last act in the drama, Trump and Leo, already in May 2025, even before Three Eye Atlas appeared, whose appearance once again reminds us that Jesus is coming. He has long since left heaven. Just to be clear, currently, no Sunday law has been passed. There is also not yet a Sunday law proposal introduced, as was the case in 1888 or 1889. But the extremely influential Heritage Foundation has brought forward this proposal, and it is to be expected that this proposal will be adopted and implemented in the foreseeable future. By the way, this foundation also published the well-known document Project 2025, which we've frequently cited. There, too, Sunday is highlighted as the National Day of Rest. Now the question arises, why was this proposal made public on January 8, 2026? And is there protest against it yet? One would expect the whole body of Adventism to cry out loudly, along with the Seventh-day Baptists, all Jews living in America, and smaller Sabbath-keeping communities. We ourselves only learned of this Heritage Foundation proposal on January 29, when Brother John received the automatic notification of a report from the German Adventist Press Service, which in turn refers to a short protest statement from the North American Division dated January 18. Here is another very informative article from the American outlet Spectrum dated January 21, which also reestablishes the connection to Wagner and Jones and Project 2025. Please follow this link if you're interested. But now let's take a closer look at the protest text of the North American Division of the Adventist Church. Here you see the publication date, January 18. And here is the entire protest text on the official website of the powerful but unfortunately also mostly fallen North American Division. Let's read it. A proposal by a Washington, D.C.-based advocacy organization to legally recognize and enforce a uniform day of rest represents a disturbing disregard for the religious freedom of all Americans. The Heritage Foundation's document, Saving America by Saving the Family, calls for states and local municipalities to restrict commercial activities on Sunday as a way to promote spiritual engagement and provide a regular day of relaxation for American workers. Seventh-day Adventists believe all people have been created in God's image with the freedom to worship according to the dictates of their conscience. For more than 160 years, the Church has forcefully advocated against any form of Sunday law. Adventists have always understood these laws, whether at a local, state, or federal level, as attempts to compel conscience, even when they are defended on pretextual secular grounds, such as promoting the health of communities and families. This new proposal for a uniform day of rest is irreconcilable with America's rich heritage of protecting the religious freedom of all its citizens, regardless of their religious beliefs or non-belief. It represents a dangerous desire to use state power to advance religious objectives. Restricting commercial activities on Sunday also raises serious practical concerns for members of those faiths that do not worship on Sunday, including Seventh-day Adventists and Orthodox Jews. Sunday laws run counter to the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which preserves religious freedom for all Americans by requiring the government to remain neutral between different religious faiths. Our church leaders in the North American Division and the union conferences will continue to uphold the banner of truth and religious liberty, firmly opposing this proposal and any similar measures. That's it. The text itself is, of course, politically correct. But personally, I have to say, honestly, that the article from the German press service or the Spectrum contribution processes far more than this brief official statement from a division. On the General Conference website, nothing has been found so far, so the church leadership is currently silent. This short statement somehow lacks the power to properly evaluate this Sunday law effort and place it in the right context. And the right context is decisive here, as I will show shortly. Meanwhile, some Adventist groups or congregations have taken up this topic and informed about it more or less, and that is good. But one of the best-known voices is probably that of Walter Veit. And I refer to this video with the title, Second Beast Rises, Sunday Law on the Horizon. Well, the horizon is more or less far away, and so Martin and Walter sit comfortably in their armchairs in this video and work through the topic in a relaxed way. Walter Veit says at minute 8:24 in the video, quote, "If you take, for example, the parable of the 10 virgins, in the King James Version it says, 'The bridegroom cometh.' The New International Version says, 'He is here.' However, I haven't seen that he is here. But the New International Version seems to believe so. Anyway, he is coming, and his coming is near. So even if I titled the whole thing with here and not near, it actually means that the events leading to his coming are already here." End quote. And here is the point. Jesus is not here yet. One sees the second coming of Jesus somewhere on the horizon, and with this Sunday proposal, a little closer. But in no way is the midnight cry being given, because Dr. Veit quoted from this parable. Not even the General Conference, the church leadership, has woken up yet. What everyone lacks is the context of time, and therefore all fail to give the midnight cry when it should be given. Only those who know when the bridegroom comes, at least day and hour, that is, year and month, can also wake the others. Now, is there anyone on earth who knows God's clocks? Is there anyone who has seen and also proclaimed the sign of his coming? Of course. A man and his small congregation, the prophesied Elijah, and the harpers from Paraguay, with the currently small remnant of the Church of Philadelphia, have tried to awaken Christendom for many years, but especially since the sounding of the Jubilee shofar on October 14, 2024. We are the only ones who not only look at earthly events, but our motto is unlocking revelation with biblical astronomy. We look up and have learned over many years to interpret God's voice from heaven and to bring his speaking into harmony with the right Bible verses. And as you know, God has clocks in the firmament. And if you can read these clocks correctly, then you can also place the events in the right temporal context. And only then can you ultimately give the midnight cry. Only then do the events have power. And we've often said that Jesus, when he was human here on earth, knew many things. Yeah, he knew almost everything. But one thing he didn't know, the time. And when Jesus ascended to heaven, he received the revelation from the Father, which Jesus in turn gave to the angel Gabriel. And Gabriel revealed it to John. So if Jesus only had one question, when? Because he didn't know when he would return. And the Father gives him the revelation afterward, then surely the book of Revelation is the answer to Jesus' only question. When, dear Father, may I return? So if you unlock Revelation, one thing comes out above all else: a date. Or let's say day and hour. A year, in our case, the 70th Jubilee year, and a month within the 70th Jubilee year. Do you understand how important it is to decipher Revelation? Yes, many Christians need the gospel, the milk message. That is what saves. But Revelation must also be deciphered so that Jesus does not come like a thief for them. But day and hour are known because they are watching. Since 3i Atlas was discovered officially on July 1st, 2025, we have produced one video after another, proclaiming that Jesus has thrown the censer from Revelation 8 and is on his way, as hinted at in this title image. One video was even called The Midnight Cry. We have presented the core dates of 3i Atlas, especially December 19, as the closest point to Earth, and as a maximum, March 16, 2026, when 3i Atlas reaches Jupiter, the king planet. All this is within the 70th Jubilee year. Especially Brother John's latest videos nail down this last date particularly firmly. And so we have so far proclaimed the day of the second coming, that is, the 70th Jubilee year, with our videos. And in detail, we have increasingly worked out the hour, that is, the month of the second coming, within the Jubilee year. And of course, 3i Atlas helps us with that. Avi Loeb, Silke, Stefan Burns, and many others know very well that 3i Atlas is not a normal comet, but something living, or rather something technical, something that is consciously controlled. Here is the title image again, with a small hint. Do you see it? It's right here. It should be nothing new for those who have watched our videos so far. Jesus is coming with 3i Atlas. Again, I know of no one in the whole world who proclaims that Jesus is coming with three-eye atlas, or that three-eye atlas indicates the arrival of Jesus. And because we were able to discover the censer in the firmament, one can place the current events in the right temporal context. Certainly, we've had to make improvements here and there, but for us, the second coming of Jesus is not somewhere on the horizon, but within the 70th Jubilee year, and fixed by the path of Three-Eye Atlas, as Brother John has impressively shown in his last videos. Yes, even the last hour at the end of the Jubilee year is already known to all those who have watched our videos. This and the next video are intended once again to serve the purpose of waking the virgins who still sleep, so that it's finally understood. The bridegroom cometh. Yes, he's already here. And so that this video gains even more power, let's first conclude the Sunday law topic. What does heaven say about the mark of the beast? Let's look at this short clip from the video, The Last Car, which was recorded on November 29 and published on December 5, 2025. Look at the date when heaven pointed to a seal forming.
So, I see a mark on a beast. Can you see it too? What we believe to be already the end of Satan is indeed that Satan strikes back. And we have now this last act of the drama. All of a sudden we have the mark of the beast test. All of a sudden we have jail for those that keep the Sabbath. All of a sudden the saints are brought to the guillotines, because we have a verse in Revelation that speaks about many decapitated in that time. Concentration camps. The plagues are falling. When we do away, I said that in the last sermon already, when we do away these fanatics there, they brought the plagues over us. When we do away with them, when we kill them off, then the plagues will be stopped. Here, that's the mark of the beast test. Sunday against Sabbath.
One cannot predict such events unless heaven shows it and confirms it. And now compare this utterly powerless 4-paragraph short statement of the Adventists' North American Division with the sign in heaven, where a striking and unmistakable mark is pressed onto the forehead of the beast, Capricornus. And who predicted it beforehand? It was Elijah, whom only a small flock recognized and learned from. And because neither the Adventist Church nor other churches or denominations wanted to look up and learn God's voice from heaven in Elijah's modern prophetic school, they cannot sound the midnight cry. They do not know God's clocks. But this mark in the firmament gives the power, because revelation must be deciphered in connection with the heavens. And with that, the accompanying earthly events regarding the Sunday law are placed in the correct temporal context. On January 8th, the proposal for this uniform day of rest on Sunday was put forward, and that culminated in a formal short statement of concern on January 18 from the Adventist Church Division. But what does this great heavenly sign ultimately point to at its core? We have now seen on January 18, 2026, how this remarkable sign formed in heaven, a date that is obviously extremely important to God, and we will discover even more about it. For us as High Sabbath Adventists, however, January 8 is also significant. The very first article that Brother John wrote is called Iceberg Ahead. Here you see a screenshot from our first website, lastcountdown.org, and the first original English article was published on January 8, 2010. And the topic was watching for the biggest iceberg that can be discovered in Adventism. Let's read a small excerpt from the article. Many Adventists argue that it is not our job to watch what the enemy does. But I agree with Ellen G. White that it is indeed also necessary to predict icebergs in the fairway. And the largest iceberg that awaits us is probably the National Sunday Law in the U.S., because we know that our time of preparation must be completed beforehand. Wouldn't it be good for us to quickly spy out this iceberg a bit earlier to make up for lost time? Exactly on January 8, 2026, the Heritage Foundation published the Initiative for a Uniform Day of Rest. The storm of persecution through the mark of the beast is now drawing over the world. The seal on the beast confirms it, since Capricornus also stands for the first beast, the papacy, and its mark is Sunday sacredness. On the anniversary of when Brother John wrote the first article, Watching for the Sunday Law in the U.S., the Heritage Foundation published exactly this proposal. What began in 2010 with the first article has now become concrete and visible on that very anniversary in 2026. Now, both dates, January 8 and January 18, are connected with the history of this ministry and with heaven. And once again, it's proven that revelation is unlocked with biblical astronomy. But there's even more to discover here, because the sign in the heavens is too great, and it certainly does not point to the lukewarm, fallen Adventist church that simply never wanted to look up and only issued a small statement in this regard. After some searching, one finds that the traditional week of prayer for Christian unity always takes place from January 18 to 25, in that these are the days between the Catholic feasts of St. Peter and St. Paul, and that these prayer days have a symbolic significance. When I read that, it was clear why God pressed a seal on Capricornus, on Azazel, on the first beast, as the Catholic Church with the Pope. Do you know it too? In the video already mentioned earlier, the last act in the drama, we once again explained exactly when the agenda of the papacy, which Pope Benedict had already proclaimed, comes to a head. In this video, we also explained how Leo XIV continues the agenda of his predecessor, Leo XIII. By all means, please watch this video. In any case, here you see the signet of Paul, or Saul, and this symbol was already decoded by Brother John on January 18, 2010, when the original article was published. Did you notice? January 18 again. And on this anniversary, the sign appeared in heaven. That is what the Lord wants to point to. In the video, and of course in Brother John's article, it's explained that the chain with the 17 chain links will close from 2025 to 2026. 2008 to 2009 plus 17 chain links, that is, plus 17 years, results in the year 2025 to 2026. Of course, this Masonic signet is not about the good Paul, but about the persecuting Saul. And here we are, exactly here in 2026. And that is the mark of the beast, the last test that is coming. That is the agenda of Leo XIV. And because the American Pope Leo XIV, together with Trump, has this plan and will also implement it, God also presses a seal on his forehead. And I say it again right away. Since September 21, 2025, when Charlie Kirk was bid farewell, in this spectacle, the second woe began with fire, smoke, and brimstone of deception. We have made so many videos about it. Even though Charlie preached the Sabbath, people did not understand and have since run into Sunday churches instead of leaving them. We have reported on it. And so this coming mark of the beast will be welcomed with open arms by the Sunday-keeping American population and the sleeping Protestant population without any great protest. We have warned against it since September 21, 2025, with all the videos shown earlier, how the Charlie Kirk tragedy is used to arouse the sleeping Christians, but keep them in Sunday churches. And now you understand why it is so important to stand on the Lord's side and look up, so that his children may still ascend before the end of the 70th Jubilee year, so that they may be preserved from this time of the mark of the beast. God is time, and it is missing in the churches. What else are we supposed to cry out, except the bridegroom cometh? Wake up, go out to meet him. Here are a few additional notes to round off the topic. Leo XIV personally closed the week of prayer. As you can read, the high feasts of Peter and Paul are special, as is also evident from the signet. And on the high feast of Paul, Leo became active. It's clear that the unity of Christians will show itself in the fact that they all have a common day of rest, because of the family, of course, since the family is faith independent. And Charlie Kirk could not convert any Christians, as was the conversion of Saul to Paul. But the startled Christians say, I haven't been to church in 15 years. I will be in attendance this Sunday. And this man answers, I haven't been in 40 years. I'm going on Sunday to support Charlie. In other videos, we've presented many such quotes and statements. Here is just one example, because it fits to round off the topic. Following this link, you'll find masses of statements about how people are flocking to church on Sunday. I would say missed the target. These Christians should leave the whore of Babylon and honor the Lord of the Sabbath on the Sabbath. But because they run to church on Sunday, they have neither supported Charlie nor helped Jesus. And so, since September 2025, a third of the Christians have died in the second woe. So says the text of the sixth trumpet. Here is the Vespers sermon of the high feast of Paul. Whoever reads Brother John's article, The Year of Saul, sees the exact parallel in this sermon. Benedict likewise honored the good Paul in the special year of Paul in 2008 to 2009. But the signet that the Illuminati understood and understand speaks of chaining, enslavement, and thus of Saul the persecutor. And Leo, as the current supreme Illuminati, naturally understands the 17-year-long plan until the chain closes, and speaks sweetly and nicely of the conversion of Saul to Paul, but in truth highlights the persecution of those who proclaim Christ, but the very Christ who wants to be worshipped on the Sabbath, because that is what the true fourth commandment says. You now know the context and can correctly understand these lines of his sermon. Here is a preview from the National Catholic Register, published on December 31, 2025. We will learn what Catholics think about this year, 2026, and about the presence of Leo XIV. They call it the year of Leo, that is, the year of the lion. And here it says that 2026 is likely to be the year that he begins to fully make his mark. He will make his mark on the year, that is, press his seal on it. Now we know what the seal or mark of the first beast will be. One more thing. Look at what Leo did on January 7 and 8. That is, on the day the Heritage Foundation published its proposal to save America. He convened an extraordinary consistory of all cardinals that laid the path for the next 2 years of his pontificate. Here is the link to his opening address for anyone who wants to read it more closely. Here are the 4 core points of the extraordinary meeting of cardinals, where in the context of the Heritage Foundation's proposal to save the family, the point of liturgy, source and summit of Christian life, would fit. Christian life must be saved, which begins in the family unit. And after the protest against Rome, except for very few, has died, Sunday will probably remain the day of rest for many. And so the mark of Rome remains on them. And such, according to Revelation 14:10, will have to drink the cup of God's wrath without mercy. And that comes after the first resurrection and general ascension have taken place. Please take this seriously and decide because the Jubilee year ends on March 20, 2026, with the moon sighting of the first month of the new year. And finally, Mr. Trump must not be missing. He also helps in various ways to establish the mark of the beast in his country. So says Revelation 13. He also promotes Charlie Kirk's book on his Truth Social platform. But it's no problem for him to promote this book, because if you read carefully, the following comes to light. On the website sabbathtruth.com, they dealt with the book and found the following. The author reports, Kirk says, "My purpose in writing is to urge the world, people of all faiths and backgrounds, to stop for one day." And although he personally kept the Sabbath from Friday evening to Saturday evening, he admits, "I don't think the specific day, Saturday or Sunday, is of primary importance, and I do not believe disobeying Sabbath in the legal sense is a sin for Christians under grace." You already see that the official book version clearly leaves both days as options, and even claims that it is not a sin to replace the true Sabbath with Sunday. Let's read on. He continues, "So whether you keep the Sabbath on Saturday, honor the Lord's Day on Sunday, or practice daily rhythms of intentional rest and worship, do not abandon the principle." Kirk confessed to sometimes working on Sabbath, saying, "If I have to work on Saturday, I take Sunday as my Sabbath." Kirk's advice is to think of Sabbath not as an all-or-nothing practice, but as a rhythm of renewal you fiercely prioritize. Okay, you heard for yourself what the message of this book is. Here is the link to the website so you can convince yourselves. But it is completely clear that with these statements in the book, no one will accept the true Sabbath. One paragraph in the book is still extremely revealing. A national cultural rhythm. At the end of his book, Kirk writes, "Imagine if America began to honor the Sabbath again, not merely as a personal spiritual practice, but as a national cultural rhythm. Picture Saturday, or Sundays, once again becoming a time of collective pause. Our frayed, fractured society would begin to knit itself back together, not through government programs or corporate initiatives, but through God's design. One day in 7 set apart for healing, remembering, and being human again. The Sabbath would become not just a private act of worship, but a public act of restoration." Wow, I would say that is exactly the Heritage Foundation's proposal. Exactly the same words, the same idea. Who copied from whom? Who inspired whom? Or is it all part of the great plan to close the chain in Paul's signet in 2026? You know the answer. One short postscript. It is not exactly known whether the book manuscript was subsequently improved by Erica or someone else, or not. There are rumors about it, anyway. The fact is, however, that this book, in its official version, will not move anyone to keep the Sabbath, but people will obediently go to church on Sunday according to tradition, because of Charlie, of course. He wrote it that way in the book, or allowed it. And so, America will apparently be saved. So people think, including the family. But in God's eyes, it's a lost nation. Now there should be no more doubt about what you should do. Leave Babylon immediately. Show fear of God and keep his unchanging 10 commandments, including the true seventh-day Sabbath. At this point, allow me one final comment. This coming Sunday law is therefore the last of the 3 end-time tests, the establishment of the mark of the beast, mandatory Sunday sacredness. What were the previous tests? First came the LGBT image of the beast. Same-sex marriage was introduced in the USA in 2015 by Obama, and then spread to a large part of the world. Even today, this attack is felt on true marriage between man and woman, and thus on the true family. The second test was the mRNA vaccine attack during the COVID pandemic. This serum changed the DNA created by God, which can be represented as a long number. That was the number of the beast, which unfortunately was injected into many deceived people. And now we see the push of the third and last test, the mark of the beast, which will come to a head in the question of the Sabbath versus Sunday. Those who wish can read this article. Here is the QR code for it. Here you will find very, very great information about it. A complete reformation in the Middle Ages in Luther's time failed because applying sola scriptura consistently would also have demanded the sanctification of the seventh day, the Sabbath. This breach in the wall was closed by the early Adventist Church when they began to keep the Sabbath again in 1846. But then this Adventist Church departed from the straight path, and many false teachings entered, leading to a 120-year wilderness wandering that was supposed to end in 2010. Elijah came in 2010 and publicly proclaimed the Orion message to them, which should have moved this church to repentance, contrition, and conversion. But unfortunately, that did not happen. Therefore, God prepared a remnant from this once fruitful church that should successfully complete the Reformation that once began. Therefore, it was and is more necessary now than ever to hold God's banner high and to keep all God's commandments. The last of the 7 blessings in Revelation reads, "Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life, and may enter in through the gates into the city." Revelation 22:14. I hope this first current topic has been understood. And with this heavenly confirmation of the seal on the forehead of Capricornus, we jump straight to the next fulfillment that happened before our eyes. It's about the topic of Greenland. As you know, Trump, who is the destroyer named Abaddon and Apollyon, wants to annex Greenland, first with military force, then buy it, then with a deal, then with bribery of the locals. The latest news on this topic converged at Davos during the most recent World Economic Forum meeting in January 2026. Here is the BBC headline. What we know about Trump's framework of future deal over Greenland. The article continues. What has been said about the framework deal? President Trump made the announcement after talks at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Based upon a very productive meeting that I have had with the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, we have formed the framework of a future deal with respect to Greenland, he said on his Truth social media platform. He did not give details, but said talks would continue to reach the agreement. After all the previous threats, this news came as quite a surprise to everyone. Here you see the original post again on Truth Social from January 21, 2026. And on the right is a news report showing how surprising this post from Trump was. Let's read. Details of the arrangement are yet to emerge. The only thing I know is the announcement that was made yesterday, Alvarez said, the Spanish foreign minister. I talked to the ministers of foreign affairs of all those allied countries, and they have the same information as I. Just the announcement. So this was a surprise attack by Trump, who made a bilateral agreement with NATO Secretary General Rutte without the NATO members knowing. In which time frame presented by Brother John does this Greenland story fit? In the video, The Last Car, Brother John presented the time frame for the fall of Babylon from Revelation 18, that is, the 3 hours in which the kings of the earth, the merchants, and finally the captains lament over the fall of Babylon. Anyone who hasn't seen the video yet should watch it. Here is the QR code, but briefly for a refresher. In the video, it's shown how it's possible that from the 7th plague, in which we have been since January 3, 2026, and in which God remembers Babylon, the 3 hours of Babylon's fall can be arranged until March 16, 2026. Don't forget, Three-Eye Atlas met the lightning that shines from east to west on the same day, that is, the comet C2020 F7, Lemon. All this has been sufficiently presented in the newer videos, and the assumption was that from January 3, 2026, the Sun activates 3 constellations and thus indicates the 3 hours in the Mazzaroth. The Sun is the hour hand, because there are 12 constellations in the Mazzaroth, and the Moon is the minute hand. After the Venezuelan president Maduro and his wife were brought out of the country by the USA in a special operation on January 3, the Greenland topic came back into the press. In the timeline, you see that this falls into the first hour of Babylon's fall. And at the end of the first hour came the deal in Davos. Let's check whether the biblical text matches the heavens. Let's read from Revelation 18, verses 9 and 10. And the kings of the earth, who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her, shall bewail her and lament for her, when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. Davos is in Switzerland, so in Europe. And when we speak of the kings of the earth, we are right in Europe. Let's read what ChatGPT says. In Europe, there are currently 12 sovereign monarchies, that is, 12 states in which the head of state is a monarch. These 12 monarchies in Europe are Belgium, Denmark, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Monaco, Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, Spain, United Kingdom, Andorra, and Vatican City. Some lists count only 10 monarchic states if Andorra and the Vatican are not considered classic monarchies. Okay, 10 or 12. So the place already fits perfectly. Denmark itself, to which Greenland belongs, is of course also a monarchy. Can we find in the press that at least some of these kings have lamented? Here is a whole list, starting with Belgium, Denmark, Sweden, the mighty Kingdom of Great Britain, to which the Commonwealth belongs, Spain, and Norway. All complained and grumbled about Trump. Norway was particularly in the press because Trump wrote like a little offended child. In a text message published on Monday, he told the Norwegian Prime Minister that he no longer felt an obligation to think purely of peace. Norway had denied him the Nobel Peace Prize, and now he apparently no longer needs to pay so much attention to peace. Well, anyone who has followed the events around Greenland knows that the kings in Europe and other presidents have lamented, as the text says. And when did the surprising deal come? At the end of the first hour of Babylon's fall, as the text also says. Was there coincidentally a fire, a blaze that caused smoke? Believe it or not, exactly when Trump and Rutte made the deal in Davos, the Victoria Hotel in Davos caught fire on January 21. And another fire alarm was triggered in the Congress Center. You can read this short article yourself here. Time and place fit perfectly to fulfill the text. But this apparently insignificant fire or incident in Davos stands for a fire that can no longer be extinguished and is much bigger. Have you read in the news what is happening in Europe because of this Greenland controversy or USA-EU controversy? Merz pulls the emergency brake. Invitation for new alliance with 6 countries already sent. That is the title of this video from the channel Vermietertagebuch. This YouTuber writes about the video. Last night, our federal government dropped the bomb and effectively buried the European Union. Completely quietly. No press conference, no headlines. The federal government sent an internal letter with a clear message. The EU is no longer viable. This letter went to 6 other countries, and a new alliance was proposed. Fewer states, more power. If this plan succeeds, then the EU is history, and it will trigger a massive chain reaction. The last weeks and months have shown the kings and presidents of the EU that they are in a deadlocked situation with the USA, and they want to try other ways. But that breaks up the previously organized EU. In this Reuters article, it says, Germany pushes for two-speed Europe with new bloc of 6 leading economies. Due to the decision-making inertia of the 27 member states, Germany, France, Poland, Spain, Italy, and the Netherlands want to decouple. Further down in the article, to survive in an increasingly unpredictable geopolitical situation, Europe must become stronger and more resilient, Klingbeil wrote in the letter to his counterparts dated Monday, adding that continuing as before could not be an option. And here, of course, he refers to the experiences with Trump and the USA. Read it yourself and form your own opinion. The Europe of the kings is falling apart in one way or another. That's how it looks. And that reminds us of the statue in Daniel 2, where a certain stone strikes the feet with the 10 toes. And that points to Europe. And you know what happens then? We've just looked at what took place during and at the end of the first hour of Babylon's fall. Is there a theme that dominates the current second hour? If we find that, then we also know what the lament will look like around or shortly after February 16. It is helpful if we first read the biblical text. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise any more. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and much, much, much more are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. The merchants of these things, which were made rich by her, shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city, that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. So it is about the merchants or traders. And from the long list of traded goods with which money is made, the first two are probably very interesting: gold and silver. Have you seen what happened in the markets on Friday, January 30, 2026? Gold and silver prices collapsed after a historically strong rally. Also, historically fast and deep. Here are some news reports with links. Please read them yourself. The gold price fell by about 18%, and the silver price by about 38%. Those are numbers you simply don't see with gold and silver. And this is just the beginning, because the second hour of Babylon's fall, where the merchants and traders lament, is not yet over. I don't believe that after this presentation of the facts, there's any doubt left about where we stand in the prophetic timeline. I would like to point out one thing that has particularly struck me personally in recent days when observing social media, especially X. One of the traded goods is slaves and souls of men. Read it again in the Bible text on the previous slide. And I notice that recently there has been an unprecedented disclosure of names, emails, and photos from the Epstein files. Things about well-known people are coming to light that make you sick to your stomach. Slaves and souls of men points to human trafficking. And there is probably no sadder disclosure right now than the contents of the Epstein files. Minors were trafficked and souls were sold. That is, human sacrifices were made as if they were worth nothing. And yet, many of them became rich, as the text says. Honestly, I don't want to waste any more words on it because it's such a filthy evil. God remembers Babylon in this respect also. And justice is coming, 100%. What else is left for me to say at the end of the first part of the video series, The Bridegroom Cometh? You know the day, that is the 70th Jubilee year, and when it ends. And you know the hour, that is the moon before the end of the Jubilee year. You know in which hour of Babylon's fall we are. We have reminded you once again of Three-Eye Atlas and what it really is. You've seen the seal, the mark on Capricornus, and know what awaits people who do not look up and thus do not expect the second coming, or only in years, or perhaps think that 1,000 golden years are coming on this corrupt earth. It should have become clear what the mark of the beast is, and not what many believe it to be. No, it's not a barcode or a chip in the hand. Look again at the harness on the horse. Since June 25, 2025, we know that Jesus comes because the Bible proclaimed it in harmony with heaven through Three-Eye Atlas. Behold, the bridegroom comes. Wake up, light your lamps, and go out to meet him. Three-Eye Atlas was discovered directly above the cross at the galactic equator, and the cross points not only to the morning judgments, not only to the crucifixion itself at 9 o'clock, but especially to the dark 3 hours from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock. For the unrepentant world, the appearance of Three-Eye Atlas has indeed indicated the dark time. Not 12 o'clock noon, but 12 o'clock midnight. May your lamps now burn. Go out and proclaim the good news wherever you can. The bridegroom cometh. And in part 2, we will show the entire final timeline of the two witnesses from Revelation 11. And once it is deciphered and recognized, it will be possible to proclaim the midnight cry with pinpoint accuracy. And we will do that. You will see how the 4 points of the two witnesses on the Mazzaroth receive the spirit of life, how they stand on their feet, how they hear the call to ascend one after another, what their final task is, and when and how they ultimately ascend. That will probably be the climax of their work. It is heading toward the second coming at full speed. Please stay tuned and hold on now. Amen.